The Russian tanks were lined up like armored giants across Zaporizhia's wheat fields, T-90Ms gleaming under the dawn. They expected an easy push forward. What they didn't see was the invisible map being drawn above them, 20 Ukrainian drones marking every vehicle in real time. Within minutes, 120 suicide drones screamed across the fields at treetop level. But the terrifying part isn't what the cameras captured. It's how a sudden signal failure nearly derailed the entire plan at the very start. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Imagine dozens of tanks crawling across the steppe, each one weighing more than 60 tons, rolling forward in perfect order. Crews believed they moved unseen, just another armored column pressing into enemy territory. What they could not know was that an invisible set of crosshairs had already been etched over them, a map that no human eye could detect. The outlines of their formation, the distance between vehicles, even the spacing of fuel trucks had been logged before the first track even bit into the earth. The hunt had begun long before the tanks ever realized they were prey. At first light, a network of small Ukrainian reconnaissance drones rose silently above the fog. Each engine buzz was quieter than a lawn trimmer, vanishing into the morning air as they scattered across the wide open fields. 20 long-range UAVs flew in coordinated lanes, every camera streaming live images to operators hidden in barns, basements, and mobile trucks kilometers away. They weren't just sketching rough coordinates, they were building a living map, a layered digital atlas that tagged each vehicle in motion. One operator marked command tanks by their antenna arrays, another labeled support trucks by tire thickness, and another noted gaps where artillery batteries could fire. Then came the scare. Drone 111, one of the primary scouts, lost all telemetry mid-flight. Its feed went dark, and with it, a section of the convoy vanished from the map. For a synchronized strike, that gap could collapse targeting calculations for dozens of units waiting on the signal. Mortar crews held positions, operators shouted at dead screens, and the plan, carefully woven through weeks of preparation, threatened to unravel in seconds. A billion-dollar column was still advancing unchecked, and the eyes guiding them had just blinked shut. Yet, the system had depth. 19 remaining eyes still fed the network, patching coordinates live. Each drone transmitted not just to one center, but to a web of tablets, laptops, and field radios scattered like seeds across villages and trenches. Data overlapped, creating redundancy. When one view fell blind, others stitched the picture together, defining that moving line of tanks now called the Steel Serpent, an armored body stretching nearly 3 kilometers, twisting across farmland like a metallic river. Once charted from above, its scale was both intimidating and strangely vulnerable, a colossal target reduced to glowing markers crawling across a digital grid. Backing that fragile web were 120 weaponized drones hidden on the ground. Each one carried a shape-charge warhead designed to punch through the upper armor of battle tanks. When launched, they skimmed low, flying inches above grain stalks to avoid radar. From the air, they looked like swarms of insects, hugging contours of fields, darting across irrigation lines, and cutting in with computer-guided accuracy. The convoy never saw them, never heard them, at least not until the first detonations punched through steel. But before that release, another blow came. A Russian electronic pulse severed the main command drone, silencing its signal entirely. Mortar units wavered, blind to adjustments, crews misaligned, and infantry radio chatter rose into open panic. In that gap of confusion, Sergeant Mola, operating from a ruined farmhouse, pulled out a consumer quadcopter bought off the shelf. Its camera lacked range, its endurance barely 30 minutes. It provided enough visuals to realign fire plans. What should have been chaos turned into a rough continuity. Missiles corrected course, mortars regained rhythm, and despite technology buckling, the strike could resume. This flexibility mattered more than the machines themselves. The fragile consumer drone stitched the chain back together, proving that initiative at the lowest level could keep an entire attack alive. Invisible signals guided steel into fire, even after the supposed nerve center had been cut. The Serpent was trapped, but the sky was only the beginning. Far louder engines were already waiting, engines not made of armor, but of bare frames and dirt bike tires built for speed. How could a dirt bike outrun and outfight a tank that weighed 80 tons and carried thick layers of armor plating? The answer was not in strength, but in raw speed, the shock of sudden movement, and the willingness of a rider to gamble his life for one decisive strike. The third phase of the ambush was unlike anything tanks were built to face. After hours of silent surveillance from the skies, the ground teams pulled forward, waiting behind ridges, barns, and broken walls. Then, on signal, 200 motorcycles rolled out at once and poured into the open fields. The sudden flood of bikes looked almost reckless, a thin wave of men with nothing but light rocket launchers aiming straight at machines that could withstand artillery barrages. On paper, the idea bordered on suicidal. A tank gun could pick off targets kilometers away. Its armor meant to laugh off handheld weapons. Yet what the Russian crews did not account for was how hard it was to lock onto something moving just meters in front of them, weaving through grass, darting left and right, disappearing behind terrain dips before a turret could rotate. Wing 1 spearheaded from the southern ridge. Their job was the most dangerous, close to point blank. Riders surged forward, engines screaming, cutting the distance before tank gunners even got a chance to aim. RPG-26 tubes swung from their backs as they raced alongside armored giants, pressing yards away from armor that usually shrugged off distant firepower. When they fired, the warheads knifed into side panels where defenses were weakest, joints in skirt plating, engine hatches, and turret rings. Explosions ripped open gaps that turned once invincible tanks into burning shells. North of them, Wing 2 had been waiting in rubble fields filled with wrecks and abandoned trucks, using them as camouflage. From these wrecks, their motorbikes darted forward with something entirely different: Malutka wire-guided missiles. Operators hid behind slabs of steel, spooling control lines, guiding missiles by hand toward fresh T-90Ms still gleaming from the factory. At ranges around 280 meters, rocket tails streaked through smoke and into their targets. Even the most modern tanks could not shrug off a direct strike into thinner armor at the rear. While those two wings tore at the convoy's teeth, Wing 3 knew the real chokehold lay deeper in the body. Tanks needed fuel. Without it, the convoy was a static graveyard. So they went for the softest, deadliest part: rows of fuel trucks rolling in the serpent's belly. Their sprint cut through hedges and haystacks, straight to the lumbering tankers. The first blast ignited the liquid payload, and the convoy lit up. One strike after another cascaded until a 45-meter fireball rose over the field, blinding both sides with heat and light. Everything nearby was engulfed. One rider, Oli, pressed deeper than anyone else. His leg shattered by shrapnel, he propped himself on the dirt with an RPG balanced against his shoulder. A Russian Kurgan machine gun had been pinning down his wing, trapping others in the open. Ola fired anyway, the shot ripping the turret clean off the mounting. Moments later, the return fire silenced him, but his single action freed comrades to finish what had begun. His name spread across units afterward, a reminder that human choices carried as much weight as weapons themselves. Brains and adaptability reduced armored giants to wreckage. Billions of dollars worth of steel couldn't stop fast-thinking operators who turned consumer drones and dirt bikes into lethal tools. Technology mattered, but it was flexible minds that shifted the balance. So here's the question: was this strike a miracle of timing or a preview of how future wars will be fought? When a billion-dollar convoy can be destroyed in under half an hour, the message reaches far beyond one battlefield. If tanks can be hunted like prey, then every army must ask, whose doctrine breaks next?